With no further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome Willy Vandenbrande, who is a great supporter, not just of the CQI, but of the international quality community. I'm sure you'll have seen him at many events or many webinars. You have doubtless read plenty of his material, not least via the CQI website and Quality World. We're very grateful for your support again. And I, for one, am extremely excited and looking forward to today's session. So, Willy, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex, for the very kind introduction. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me for this session. It's a great honor to have been asked to contribute to the World Quality Week 2024. The topic of the Quality Week is From Compliance to Performance, and the title of my presentation is Quality Begins Where Compliance Ends. So it's very much in line with the World Quality Week topic as a whole. Let me first give a little introduction of myself. So, as Alex said, my name is Willy Vandenbrande. I'm from Belgium. I live in Bruges. I've had a long career in first research, then production, and later on quality. Actually, most of my career has been in quality, both as a quality manager and as a quality management consultant. I'm an ASQ fellow and a certified Six Sigma Black Belt from the American Society for Quality. I'm also an academician to the International Academy for Quality, IAQ. Within the Academy, I'm the current chair of the Quality and Planet Earth Concerns think tank. And actually, that's the topic I'm working on the most these days, is the link between quality and sustainability. Today, what I generally do, or mostly do in relation to quality, is read, speak, and write. And my latest book, called Reflections on Quality in 10.5 columns, has one column, column 9, that is titled On Compliance. And many of the things I will say here, you will find back in the text, but the presentation goes a bit further. Now, let's have a look at what I will be talking about. I will start with going a little bit back in time. Actually, not that far, but still, 1990. And you'll see why 1990 in a second. Then we'll have a look at the evolution of quality. And we'll see that this is sort of counterintuitive, or even counter to the topic of the World Quality Week, where we shifted from performance to compliance. And today I feel like we are confronted with a sea of standards, not just in quality, but also in sustainability. And I'll end with a couple of basic conclusions about compliance and about performance. Okay, let's go back in time. And as I said, we'll go back to 1990. And that was the moment, I think it was in May or June, that I attended a 3.5-day seminar, one of the classical 3.5-day seminars that Dr. Deming gave. And this was in Birmingham, UK. Okay. Now, you must realize that at that point in time, Dr. Deming was 90 years old. So, of course, he wasn't teaching 3.5 days in a row. He would open every session, and he would always start with a little bit of exercises. So he had us move our hands and legs so that we stayed fit. And then he'll give the opening speech, typically referring to some points of his well-known book, Out of the Crisis. After that, assistants would take over and we do exercises and group talks and the likes. However, at the end of the day, typically at 5 p.m., Dr. Deming would return on stage for Q&A, questions and answers. And I remember the very first day, there was a guy who asked what I think was a rather personal question. Anyway, he said, "Dear Dr. Deming, you are now 90 years old. What on earth possesses you to come to Birmingham, of all places, my apologies to the people from Birmingham, but that's what he said, to come to Birmingham of all places to give a lecture on quality. You don't need to do it for your reputation. You probably don't need to do it for the money either. So why do you do this? And Dr. Deming was thinking a little, and then he said, well, you never know, I might learn something. I remembered that because I think, if this is the one thing you remember from this speech, that's okay with me. If you remember that if you can start the day thinking I can learn something, you will never be old. Now, the second day, there was another question. And that question relates much more to the topic of this presentation. There was a guy asking Dr. Deming what he thought about ISO 9000 and certification. Now, again, this is 1990. The first ISO group of standards was released in, I think, December 1987. And at that point in time, ISO 9000 was a big issue. You could call it a hype. So everybody was thinking about certification. Maybe we can use this to control our suppliers in an easy way, and so on and so on. And Dr. Deming replied to the question, and he said, well, there's nothing really wrong with it. And if you want to use it as a basis to build your quality on, why not? But of course, it can never be a replacement for total quality management. Okay. Now, later that night, we sat at dinner, and there was some discussion, of course, about everything we had heard during the day. And at one point in time, one of the people at the dinner table referred to this answer that Dr. Deming had given. And he said the following: this shows how he, Dr. Deming, is totally out of touch with the current world of quality. And he added, just have the system certificated and get it over with. In other words, that is quality. Have the system certificated and get it over with. Now, the funny thing is that if you look at how quality developed, quality management developed, it went sort of the other way around. Because if you look at our gurus, and I don't really like the word guru, but anyway, if you look at these very important men in quality, the shoulders we stand on, of course, they're talking about performance and they're talking about improvement. Ishikawa had his 7 tools and very important, the quality circle movement that he launched, which was all about improvement projects at floor level. Turan described quality improvement as project by project in no other way. And in fact, he laid there almost the foundations of what would later become Six Sigma, which was project-oriented, of course. Deming, I refer to his book, Out of the Crisis. This is not just improve your quality. This is become better as an organization, make a better performance. It was even, in this case, become better as a nation. And Taguchi used the term for non-quality as loss to society, which was actually, in fact, something that today is very prominent within quality, and that is quality of society, societal quality, and the link with sustainability. So this was all about improvement and performance, and then came ISO 9000, and that sort of shifted the discussion. Now, I don't want to say that this is just happening in quality, because what I feel is that this shift is something that you generally see in society as a whole, not just in quality. What happened in quality is that the quality management system, and even more so the certificate, became the goal, whereas it's obviously a means. In the same way, today we talk about quality 4.0, but we focus very much on implementing digital technology, whereas the quality would be thinking about what can this technology do for us? Why would you use it? What processes would be the best to start with? Where is it important? So these are the questions that should be answered before we implement a digital technology. Unfortunately, very often we just buy and throw in a lot of digital technology and then see what happens. But it goes wider in society. I think the US Constitution has the amazing sentence of the right of everybody for the pursuit of happiness, but we seem to have changed that for the pursuit of money. When in LinkedIn there's talk about being successful, basically it's about being rich. You're not necessarily leading a happy life because you're rich. And actually, even in economy at large, where normally we should see that the economy is there for the well-being of the people, you sometimes see it turning around a little bit, where you get the impression that the people are there to keep the economy turning. We even call people resources these days. So it's a sort of a general trend, and we have to be very aware of it. Now, that does not mean that certification is not a good thing, or that compliance would not be a good thing. First of all, if I think about ISO 9001, for instance, it is achieving it. It is a group effort focusing on quality. That can never be bad. It is a very visible confirmation of what you have done. That's also a positive thing. We like that very much. We love certificate. Okay, I'll talk about that towards the end of my presentation again. But it is a visible confirmation, and actually it's something that you have achieved together. You should celebrate. We don't celebrate enough in our organizations. We always think, those of you who work in quality, I think you are probably much more talking about non-quality than about quality. So if there's something to celebrate, do that. It'll motivate people. It is, of course, a confirmation of a system. Somebody not related to your organization has evaluated and said, this is a system that confirms this, that fulfills the requirements of this standard. However, all of this, of course, within the limitations of the certificate. And I think there are a lot of misunderstandings from ISO 9000, and I think even from compliance in general. Because, of course, compliance in general also has limitations to what it means for your organization. And this sentence was also in the blog announcing this presentation. The one thing that in no way distinguishes you from your competitor is compliance. They are all compliant, otherwise they would not be your competitor. Okay. To me, this is like a no-brainer. If you say, I have 100 competitors, or I have 10 competitors, and now I'm the 11th one, and I'm the same as these 10 others, that's not gonna help you become competitive, okay? You need to differentiate. You will not differentiate through your compliance rules and certificates because, again, all your competitors have the same certificates. You will distinguish by the absolute value and quality of your product, by the superb service you offer, maybe even simply by the friendliness of your people, because if your people like working for you, that'll show, and that'll show to your customers as well. So other things are needed than being compliant if you want to be successful as an organization. The problem occurs when there's a sort of perception that being compliant almost means being excellent, or being compliant means, oh, now this company will give me no problems anymore. So I take a book with ISO 9001 certificated companies. I take a supplier out of that. I give them the orders that I want them to deliver to me. And because they're in the book, I will only have good products. We all know this is not true, but perception, of course, also is reality. So it may not be true, but that doesn't mean that there are not a lot of people who feel it is, or at least should be. I think over the years, ISO has sort of added to that perception, or added to create expectations that should not be there. Now, if we go back to 1987, we see that the first version of the standard was very clearly a contractual situation. It was about fulfilling quality requirements with a very heavy focus on quality. And it had very clear documentation demands. Some of you will remember that ISO 9001, it were 20 paragraphs, and they all started with, there must be a procedure for. Now, of course, there's been criticism on that standard. There's been complaints, there's too much documentation requirement. There's been complaints about, yes, but we still get bad products. And I think over the years, with all the changes, 2000 version adding process-based thinking, the 2015 version adding risk-based thinking, I'll come back to that in a second, you sort of create something that I would call an excellence model light. Now, the problem with that is that excellent models are scored on a moving scale, EFQM from 0 to 1,000, for instance. But a certification, compliance, is a go, no-go decision. So that's a bit tricky. And the second thing that we need to realize is that excellence is a rare thing. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't call it excellence. We would call it normal. You see, when I was a lot younger, I played football. I loved playing football. I wasn't really bad, but of course, nowhere near this guy. But then that's not a shame, because very few are as good as this guy. There are not many football players that can be compared to Leo Messi. Why? Because he's excellent, so he's rare. Now, on the other hand, compliance is big business. There are 1.3 million companies, I think, roughly today, that are ISO 9001 certificated. They cannot be all excellent. And in fact, you know, when process-based thinking was added in 2000, within 3 years, all companies were apparently organized process-based. With 2015, when risk-based thinking was there, within 3 years, all companies were doing risk-based thinking because they all stayed compliant. That has raised some questions here and there. But the point is also, and that's where the perception comes in, that we have to be very careful what expectations we launch. And now I'll take you back in time again, not that far as the first time, but to 2015. And the EOQ Congress in 2015 was in Athens. And it was, again, I think in May or June of 2015, and the standard was to be released in September, if I'm correct. Some of you may know this better, actually. So I guess in September it was released. But of course, the final draft international standard was available, and it was pretty clear to everyone what the content would be. And there were big changes. There was the high-level structure, there was the risk-based thinking, and several other things. However, this is a change to a standard. This is not changing the world. And at that conference, there was a keynote presentation on the changes. In fact, that conference, 80 to 90% of it was devoted to the new ISO standard. Okay. And this keynote was as well. So they talked about the changes. One of the changes that was illustrated was, as of the 2015 version of the standard, there will be no more request for a management representative. Okay, so that function was omitted. It wasn't mentioned anymore in the standard. So the presenter said, this means that as of the moment that companies have changed their certificate to the 2015 version, top management will be committed to quality. They have to be committed to quality because they cannot delegate it anymore to a management representative. And that's an amazing thing, because if you ask quality managers about their biggest problems, one of the things very often mentioned is lack of top management commitment. Now, I'm sitting in that audience and I hear this, and I think, well, actually, I think of John McEnroe, the very famous American tennis player, who had a bit of a temper, and that's an understatement, I think. And I was thinking about what he used to say to umpires when he didn't agree with their decision. And that was, you cannot be serious. Honestly, if you think that changing this line in the standard will mean top management will be committed to quality, you cannot be serious. You live in a parallel world. We have to be very careful with expressing these kinds of things when we know getting top management committed to quality will require quite a lot more than just changing the standard. So that's a risk I think we take. Now, I gave a presentation in 2015 as well, and the title was that ISO 9001 2015 would be a footnote in the history of quality. That was probably a little bit exaggerated, and so was maybe my relation to William Shakespeare. I used William Shakespeare a lot in that presentation. Much ado about nothing. Of course, the change wasn't nothing, but my view was there's too much ado about it, especially if you look at the EOQ conference, having, as I said, 80 to 90% of its content on the new standard. And what I will show you now is a copy-paste of a slide that I put on the screen there in Athens in 2015. This is it. When quality becomes compliance, complying will be seen as quality. If this is the most important topic for the quality community, we have lost all relevance at the strategic level, because compliance is something that is delegated to a specialist to take care of. And actually, what the guy at the dinner table said in 1990 is what the general feeling would be. Just have the system certificated and get it over with. Now, this year in Bergamo in August 2024, there was a quality management conference. And one of the key topics of the conference was, what's the problem with TQM? We have lost steam. We have lost impact at the strategic level. CEOs are less concerned about it. Actually, what we said, top management will be committed, we find that less and less. That was a problem statement that was made. I wasn't there, but a couple of months later, I was at another conference in Italy, and two of my dear quality friends had attended Bergamo, and we talked about that. Now, I could have told them, I told you so, in 2015, because that's exactly what this slide was sort of predicting. But that's not very helpful. But it does mean we need to understand that compliance, like Dr. Deming said, can only be a start to build improvement on. Now, there's one other slide I will recycle from the 2015 presentation, because I ended that presentation, as I said, I used a lot of Shakespeare. I ended that presentation with a small adapted text from Hamlet. It's a text that you all know in the original form. This is a sort of adapted, turned into a sort of quality statement. To be certificated or not to be certificated, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous auditors, or to take arms against the sea of standards and by opposing, end them. To die to sleep. No more, and by asleep, to say we end the heartache and 1,000 natural shocks that quality is add to. Now, I recycled this slide here for two reasons. The first one is because I love the beauty of language. And if you talk about the beauty of the English language, Shakespeare is not a bad reference, I guess. Now, last time I looked, ISO 9001 2015 costed €142. That's an expensive book. Especially seeing how thin it is. Now, at the EOQ Athens conference, in one of the presentations, there was somebody who asked a question about risk-based thinking, and he said, "I'm a bit confused about this risk-based thinking because it's not really risk management because there's already another standard for that, ISO 31000. So what do you really mean?" And the answer of the presenter was short, but in my view, a bit disappointing. He said, "Well, the best thing to do, depending on your business, I can't answer any question for your business. Hire a good consultant and he will help you understand it." Now, many people have called ISO 9001 common business sense. And I tend to agree with them. I think ISO 9001 is and should be common business sense, a logical way of working where you take care of quality, where you take care of your processes, where you take care of your customers. So why is common business sense written in such a way that it's almost incomprehensible, even for people who are within the quality trade? There must be a way to do it better. There's actually books out there, ISO 9001 2015, in plain English. I like that. I think it's costing 10 or 15 pounds. But if that's plain English, does that mean that the original text is unplain English, So I really feel for the next version, at the least I think they could do is hire an editor and make it more readable. But the second reason I recycled the poem is a more important one. It's a more important one, I think, to the quality community in general, and to me in particular, because I'm very much involved with the link between quality and sustainability. And that is what I call the Sea of Standards, but that, of course, in the original text of Shakespeare was called the Sea of Troubles. And I'm worried a little bit that we're gonna end up with seeing that these two are sort of creating, the Sea of Standards is creating a Sea of Troubles, and that what happened to quality with a big interest towards compliance might also be happening to sustainability. And it's sometimes I say that we have to be careful that the business of quality doesn't become more important than the quality of business. And I think that's even a bigger fear, that the business of sustainability might become more important than the sustainability of business, and in this case, the sustainability of society. And I just made a list here. ISO 14001, 14004, environmental management systems. We all know that. There are a couple of standards and guidelines on corporate social responsibility. There are now recently 3 standards on the circular economy. There's very recently an ISO UNDP, United Nations, PAS 53002 2024 on managing for the Sustainable Development Goals. There are a lot of semi-private or sometimes also activities from UN organizations. And I've mentioned the best known, B Corps, GRI, SBT, SDPI from the UNRISD, the UN Global Compact. There's recently legislation by the European Union, the CSRD and the ESRS, and there's probably some others as well. Now, obviously, a serious academic presenter would have a whole list explaining these abbreviations. I didn't want to do that. I can do that. Maybe we can add it to the slide package. So when you get it, you'll have the explanation of the various abbreviations. But imagine you are a CEO of a small or medium-sized enterprise, and you really care about sustainability, and you really want to do something honestly about your impact on the environment, your impact on Earth's biosphere, and somebody tells you, well, you know what you should do, have a look at this, and you see this list. I'm afraid that might be enough to demotivate pretty much everyone. We must be very careful that we're not, putting so much words onto it that we never get to do any action anymore. And in the case of sustainability, that becomes very critical. And another thing I wanted to point out, I said in the beginning, we really like certificates. And I'll give you an example in this topic. Several years ago, I followed a webinar by B Corps. Now, all these systems are good systems. Understand me well. There's nothing wrong with them. The problem is there's too many, and the problem is they're focusing too much on reporting and not enough on action. Now, B Corps gave a presentation, and the webinar was very simple. There was somebody from the organization explaining how they work, and then there were 2 or 3 case studies of people that had achieved the B Corp certificate. Now, all people in that webinar, all 3 or 4, clearly stated, this is not about the certificate. This is about sustainability. This is about laying a foundation to become more sustainable. Now, while they are saying that, there's a Q&A open, just like today, there's a Q&A open, and questions come in. And I followed the Q&A as they came in. So the questions were, how long does it take to get the certificate? How much does the certificate cost? Is there any special rules for my business to obtain the certificate? And so on and so on. 95% of the questions were on the certificate. So it's really something that weighs very heavily. We like certificates. Now, again, we are creating, I think, impossible expectations. Now, compared to this entire list, when I started into quality, one of the first books I read was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, an inquiry into value. I would still recommend this book to anyone in quality, and specifically to people entering the quality field. You will learn a lot about quality by reading this. There are many beautiful sentences in there, but one is the following, to me, one of the key sentences in relation to sustainability. And what is good, Phaedrus, and what is not good? Need we ask anyone to tell us these things? Do we really need all those papers and standards and guidelines to know if what we are doing is good for the environment or not? I doubt that very much. And I think that if we don't have compliance demands, and we are a small and medium-sized enterprise, I'll give you a very simple guideline of things you could look at to see what can I actually do. It's important to understand that no report has ever changed anything. It are only the actions following that have an impact. If you would look at your energy consumption, at your water consumption, at the pollution that you create, either material or liquid or whatever it is that you pollute. If you look at your material footprint, you can do already quite a lot. And you can look at where you're not doing well. As an example, if as an organization you're consuming a lot of water, it's a good idea, also financially, to see what you can do about it. If you can make it a circular system, create a circular economy within your water consumption and recycle water, that's a very, very good idea. And I want to thank my good friend, Mr. Ramanathan Ram from India, who was the first one to come up with this sort of very simple guideline. And I talked about be careful with the expectations you create. And I'll refer now to that UN passed very recent guideline 53,002 on managing for the SDGs. I refer here to one of the people for the UN. The idea is created that now that we have this, wow, now you will see something happening to these SDGs. Now they will be effective. Now everybody will understand how they can contribute and how they can do that in the most effective way. Now, how are we doing? This is the SDG World Overall Score. It started in 2015. We're now 2023. It's better, but the speed of improvement is a slow snail, sorry. So that's not very good. Thinking that now that we have this standard, this curve will go like this by 2030, that's not going to happen. You cannot be serious. Now, what could happen? Well, we could use a simple quality technique, a Pareto approach. And if we would do that, and we look at the 17 SDGs, we would see that one SDG is scoring well below 50%. Only one is below 50%. That's our biggest problem. That is equality. It only scores 41. Now, suppose we improve that. We redistribute wealth a little bit better so that the people at the lower end get some more money. One of the taglines of the Agenda 2030 is leave no one behind. So by making this number a little bit better, we would tackle the biggest problem and adding a bit of systems thinking to it, we would see that that would lead to less extreme poverty, SDG 1. It would lead to less people being hungry, SDG 2. It would lead to more access to healthcare, SDG 3, and it would lead to more access to education, SDG 4. So you see, I think an approach like this would do more for the overall sustainable development of the world than adding another guideline and another document. What is good and what is not good, need we ask anyone to tell us these things? I don't think so. We can do a lot already. And that is needed because some graph do shoot sky high, like this one or this one. And in fact, this one is an interesting one, the atmospheric CO2, which is the driver of the other curve, of course, because what you see today is that even historic moments don't have an impact on improvement yet. The increase of CO2 in the atmosphere per year was bigger after Kyoto than before Kyoto, and it is bigger after Paris than before Paris. So this is what we need to work on, and I'm very much afraid that we all be compliant, but we'll still see the curves increasing. So as a conclusion, if we think about compliance and performance, basically, if you have compliance requirements, get it over with is not a bad advice because you have to do it. If it's a legal requirement, if it's a customer requirement, it doesn't matter. You have to do it. But make sure to do it in an efficient way and make sure to do it in such a way that you have time and means available to build on top of it. It also means make sure that your compliance system is as simple as possible so that it doesn't take too many resources to keep it maintained. That's one. If you don't have compliance requirements, focus on performance. Focus on performance. Look at what you can do. And whether it's quality or sustainability, look at what you can do. Start and improve. Quality has plenty of tools to help you improve. And basically, I think in my view, one of the key tasks of a quality manager should be to make sure that this message is clear within organizations at every level of the organization. Because what we don't want to have is a perception that compliance is not the start, but the end of quality. That's not the case. Quality begins where compliance ends. And with that, I want to thank you very, very much for your kind attention. And we're open to Q&A, I think.
Thank you very much.
Over to Alex. I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Thank you, Willy. I'm sure I can speak on everyone's behalf to say what a fascinating and thought-provoking session that was. I'm very grateful. And thank you everyone for the questions that have been coming in. Do keep dropping them in. If we're not able to get to all of them, then we will try and address some of them offline. Do remember also that this has been recorded. The recording will be shared, as will the slides, so you can refer back to it. Such a lot to digest there, really. It's difficult to know where to start, really. But as I suppose a general point, we've talked about there being this sea of standards. It's becoming increasingly confusing, perhaps a distraction, and arguably a self-perpetuating business in its own right. The system of standard accreditation certification, it's a bit cyclical, and perhaps loses sight of who the end user here really is, which I'd argue is the customer of the business with the certificate. One of the commentators, Ileana, made a point earlier on that it seems that every sector or subsector has a variation of, be it 9001 or another standard, and standards for subsets within that discipline. Do we really need them? Should we just ditch standards and certification?
Yeah, that's a difficult. What you see is what I said. What people would like is to have a standard that is written in such a way that if a company obtains it, they will never have a problem anymore, which would be great from a point of view of managing your supplier base. So we keep on adding things, and then we say, yeah, in our business, this is very critical. So we add a subparagraph, and we want them to do it this or that way, which is, I think, the biggest difference between the general standard and a more sector-specific one, that the general standard basically should only say what you need to do. But in the sector-specific ones, you see they're already starting to say how you need to do it. So they're also adding methods. So you follow that method because that's what they say. That's not always very wise from a point of view that methods could be replaced by newer things. I briefly talked about quality 4.0, but for instance, you could say in our standard, we want you to use SPC. But then a company is very advanced and they use machine learning. Which basically means that this process becomes, I have some examples of that, especially in pharmaceutical industry. There's a very nice example where the process becomes much more stable. But of course, it's not SPC anymore. It's the machine learning, artificial intelligence that's controlling it. And then an auditor comes in and they sort of get negative points because they're not using SPC, but the result of their process is superior to what it was when there was a control chart. So it's really, so I think it's dangerous to go that way, but the urge to do it in such a way that it's made, I don't think you can say anything about the supplier if you don't regularly visit them,
Yeah.
for instance.
It,
But that's a lot more work than asking a certificate.
well, yeah, and there are a couple of things here. First of all, what we're kind of describing here is this desire to kind of outsource responsibility for what
Mhm.
you do and how you do it to someone else. Because well, someone's come in, they've looked at my system, they've given me my certificate, therefore I know I must be good at
Yeah.
quality. Um, so, perhaps relying on businesses taking more responsibility for demonstrating their own capability, interrogating their own suppliers, their own interested parties more directly, rather than relying on an external third party to provide that service for them.
Well, that's of course what I called in my speech the limitations of the
Yeah.
certificate and of the certification. By definition, it covers what it covers, which is good. Which I'm not saying it's to be underestimated, but it can only cover what it covers.
Mm.
Cannot guarantee excellence. It
Yeah.
cannot guarantee, let's say, quality culture, which is seen as so important, which is so important. So,
Do you think there's a risk that, this pursuit of compliance, therefore really, has the risk of it inhibiting innovation, inhibiting growth, being a barrier, not just a distraction, but is there, are they having a greater negative impact than a positive one?
oh, oh well. It's always better to do something about quality than nothing, of course. So
Hmm.
having the certificate means you are working, you have a system, you have it documented in some form. People have guidelines, so there's nothing wrong with it. Um, if if you start defining how it should be done, you get the risk of
Yeah.
hindering innovation. And of course, I think if somebody asks that question, it's probably because they feel within their organization it's for the slowing things down. And especially in innovation aspect, I can imagine that sometimes the innovative design engineers feel that the quality engineers are sort of
Hmm.
tying them and don't let them work as fast as they would want to or could move. And that might be so, re-examine your system if that feeling is there.
Yeah. And I suppose
Uh,
understanding what quality is for, not just what it is,
yeah,
is
yeah,
really key to
yeah.
that.
Yeah, look at the goal.
Yeah.
Is it are these extra slowing down rules, let's call them, supposing they're that, are they really adding to the quality of the product, to the quality of the design, and to the quality of what we offer to our customer?
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. One thing that we haven't really touched on too much in this conversation is capability, is competence. And
Hmm.
I suppose it's a little bit unfair because if you're in an environment where seeking certification or demonstrating compliance with your system for managing quality is a primary objective of the organization. You have people who are there to do that. So
Yeah.
I don't want to sound as though I'm picking on quality professionals, but to what extent, what's the role there? What's the function of the quality professional in expanding that understanding, expanding that remit, and really appreciating the
Well,
the for rather than is of quality.
yeah, I think what one of the nicest things of quality, and one of the things that I think should make any quality job an extra experience is that you can help others improve.
Hmm.
Because you're not going to make the quality. That's clear, of course. When I was a quality manager, that was often said, if I were the quality manager, I do this and I do this. And my standard reply was always, you are the quality manager. If you're the manager of engineering, you're the manager of the quality of engineering.
Yeah.
And we can help you. We can help you get better. And that, I think, is a major task for the quality profession. It's yeah, being that internal consultant.
Yeah.
And with the knowledge you have, for instance, on quality improvement methodology, help others improve. I think that's and that's such a rewarding task. I've always found that, but being a quality man, because you get confronted with a lot of, I won't say the word, but a lot of negative things
Yeah.
when the customer complaints and so on. As I said, you're probably dealing more with non-quality than with quality. But when you can see, when you help a part of the organization solve a problem and get better, and you see how that makes people proud of what they have achieved, to me, that's probably the biggest reward you can get in a quality
Mm.
function. You have helped others to improve. And that's such a rewarding task, I think.
I suppose that comes back to this idea of quality being everyone's business, which is, the topic of some discussions we've had in the past. And getting an understanding that quality is not just something that the quality engineer and the quality department looking at the quality processes does. It's something that
No, no,
everyone,
no, no, no.
everyone
We,
does.
we can help, we can support. Actually, the improvement will happen much more within the value chain than in the quality department.
Yeah,
It's in the value chain that the improvement needs to be, and it's our job to help them, to
yeah.
support them, to guide them.
Well, while we're in the business of iconoclasm, we've given 9001 a good kicking. We've given certification and accreditation and going over, and the very notion of standards. Let's go for the big one. Is quality the wrong word? Does quality need to be rebranded? Is there some other way of talking about what it is we do and how we do it that can
Um,
challenge some of these risks, these barriers?
that's an interesting question, Alex. And in fact, next week I'll be giving a keynote speak for Xelio, the Flemish quality organization. I will refer to that there. Personally, I think quality is a perfect word. And it's something that everybody would like to have a quality life. And we
Yeah,
should work on the quality of society, and we should work on well-being. And I sometimes think that one of our problems is that we're always seem to need new terms. I don't know, it's more of a marketing trick, eh? You need to, every now and then you need to rebrand. So we had quality, and then we quality, let's call it excellence. And then nobody really knows what that is, excellence, because there's no
yeah,
real definition. When are you excellent? And when you're excellent today, maybe you're not tomorrow because other things have happened. And then we talk about lean, and we talk about Six Sigma, and I mean, when you look at Japan in 1950, they talked about total quality management.
mm,
Today, they talk about total quality management. In 50 years, they will talk about total quality management. Now, personally, I feel we could improve on that by calling it integrated quality care, because
yeah,
I think integrated is more than total, and care becomes more important than management.
yeah,
And that care we need to see as, there are many stakeholders. Earth's biosphere is one of them. We need to care for that as well. And that automatically includes sustainability within the strive for a higher quality. A
yeah.
higher quality for all, and what I very often say, a higher quality for all species, not even just for us,
Yeah.
thinking about Earth's biosphere.
I think the very
A bit focused on that, Alex.
yeah,
Planet Earth Concerns think tank, and being passionate about that, of course.
yeah,
And I think quality is a perfect word.
yeah. No, I agree. And the word itself it's emotive and it's subjective, but everyone knows what they not necessarily what they mean by quality, but they know what they feel by
Yeah,
quality, don't they?
yeah. You
Um,
experience quality,
you
and you
experience
know when
quality.
you have been
Yeah,
treated in a quality way and one
yeah,
not. And in fact, I refer to Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and he basically said it quality is undefinable. It's something that is above technical and human things,
Yeah,
bringing them together. It's a feeling.
yeah. So maybe we need to
Somebody I
stop
think
thinking of
referred to it.
ourselves as quality philosophers rather than quality managers,
Maybe, yeah,
engineers.
yeah, yeah.
So that's I mean, this has been fascinating. I could go on, but I'm conscious that it's 11 o'clock, and people have got jobs to go to. But this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for your time,
Oh,
and for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you everyone for sharing your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get through them all, but we'll see if we can address some of them offline. Before we do go, may I just reiterate my point about CPD? Think about what we've discussed today. Think about how it has the potential to impact your competence, your knowledge, skills, and understanding as a quality professional, and integrate that into your ongoing professional development plans. These opportunities are absolutely critical for us all to become better professionals. So please do apply your thoughts to that. Just a couple of announcements before we go. The International Quality Awards 2025 open for entries tomorrow. So over your lunch, go and have a look on the website, find out more about the categories and the requirements, and please engage with that. We're looking forward to a really great event next year. We are also open for applications for speakers for 2025 Quality Live, which will be returning on the 19th of June. If you would like the opportunity to contribute to the conference, please do get in touch. Again, have a look on the website and submit your proposals for our consideration. Um, that's all from me. Safe to say again, thank you very much to Willy, and I hope you all enjoy and learn much in the rest of World Quality Week. Thank you very much.
thank you for having me, Alexander, and thank you all for attending. Have a great day.